My name is Ferox. I am a 33 or soon to be 34-year-old lay Buddhist disciple of the Theravada tradition. And what that means is I'm not a monk and I'm not ordained. I'm not a master or a guru or anything like that. I'm just a regular lay disciple who is practicing the Dhamma and on his path like all of us. And what we do here is we do a little bit of a Dhamma talk, but it's also a discussion and also questions. We tend to follow the way traditional Dhamma talks done by monks. That the way they do it is the first half hour is usually a talk, and then the last half hour is questions and discussion. It's tradition for the monks that you hold off any questions to the end, but since I'm not a monk and I don't particularly like that way anyway, you can always feel free to make comments, ask questions as we're going along. Um, I'm not particularly giving any amazing wisdom or anything like that like a monk would. So there's room for discussion, room for questions, and room for talking between us Dhamma friends. So what I wanted to talk about today is, since I just came back from a 7-day meditation retreat at the Bhavana Society Forest Monastery, is I wanted to talk about the importance of retreats. Is there anybody here who has yet to go on a Buddhist meditation retreat? Well, there's meditation retreats, Dhamma retreats. Anybody who's never been on a retreat? Well, I've never been to a yoga retreat, but I guess a retreat is a retreat in some aspects. Yeah, I actually have just gotten into yoga the last 5-6 months.
User left your channel.
Not too much, particularly of the spiritual or meditative side of it, but
User left your channel.
I do enjoy it. So good. It seems like most everybody hasn't been on a retreat, so that's perfect. That's very good. Basically, what I wanted to talk about is how important they are for your practice. And the reason why they're important is because if you think about meditation as something that you do nice and peaceful, you find a nice place and it's peaceful, and you do your meditation, and then think about hell, and then put meditation and hell together, and that's a meditation retreat. I have a love-hate relationship with meditation retreats, because you go on your first retreat and you think you have this like beautiful idyllic vision of what a meditation retreat is going to be, and then the realization occurs to you that you're doing 6 hours of meditation a day for however many days you're there. And even that says, oh good, I get to do a lot of meditation. And then you start doing your sitting meditation for 6 hours in a day. And then your back starts hurting, and then you have all these problems and issues, and then you start to, eventually what you start to do is you start to realize, you start to see your aversion. And the first time I went on a meditation retreat, which was back in November, and I came back and I talked about it, and I ended up having such an aversion to meditation for the first half of the retreat that I actually, like, the reason why I went on the retreat was the thing I hated most about the retreat. It wasn't the waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't the the eating like a monk or living like a monk. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't the work that I did. I enjoyed chopping wood and working in the kitchens and anything. The only thing that bothered me about the retreat that I was on was the reason I was there. So the one thing, I guess, that I want to express in terms of my retreat is, you're going to experience pain. you're going to experience suffering. And there's a good reason for it. I'm assuming most of us are Westerners. I'm assuming most of us probably haven't grown up, sitting cross-legged on cushions while you're eating, while you're doing pretty much everything. Is that a good assumption? Is there anybody who grew up sitting on cushions their whole lives? No? Yeah, I didn't think so. The first retreat I did was a 5-day retreat. This last one that I came back on was a 7-day retreat. And if you're not used to, you might do however much meditation that you do in your daily lives, half hour at a time, and you might not get too much pain. But when you start doing 2 hours in a row, or an hour and a half, 6 hours in total a day, you start to feel it, and you start to get negative about things, like I was saying, and if you think about it the right way, and if you go about it the right way, towards the end, you start to come up with all these insights and epiphanies, and even though you went through all this pain, you want to go back again. And that was how I ended the first meditation retreat that I did back in November. And I wanted to go back so much that I went back 3 months later in March for an even longer retreat for 7 days. And one of the first things that I found was that first day. As soon as the first day, after the first 4 hours of meditation, and no, you don't do 4 hours in a row. It's not, but the average is, from my experience, has been about 6 hours of meditation in a day. And no, the most you do in a row is 2 hours. And trust me, 2 hours in a row is almost insurmountable. At least for if you're not used to it, if you're in the beginning of it, you can't get into these meditative states where you look at the clock and it's like, oh my god, 4 hours went by like it was nothing. Wow. No. I haven't gotten to that point yet, at least not on a regular basis. It's because when you're trying to meditate, however you meditate at home, when you start to really, obviously the basics of meditation is we observe the pain, we observe itches, we observe this, we observe that. Sometimes we note it, sometimes we don't, depending on the tradition. But when you are meditating and all encompassing in your mind is the pain from your back or the pain from your legs, and you start to realize, and one of my biggest realizations in this past retreat was seeing the whole greed, anger, and delusion thing, seeing how much aversion that I had to pain, and how much aversion we have to pain just in general, and trying to get past that, figuring out ways to get past that. I write a journal. When you go out on these retreats, I'll just give just a very brief description of retreats and the daily schedules and stuff like that. When you go out on retreats, you take the 8 precepts, which are the 8 monastery precepts. And those of you who might be familiar with the 5 precepts, no killing, no stealing, no lying, no sexual misconduct, and no taking of intoxicants. What's added on to when you take the 8, the no sexual misconduct changes to no sexual activity at all. Then you add no sleeping in high beds. You add no entertainment, and you add, I believe it's no garlands, no beautification. So you're adding these extra things. They're called the monastery precepts. So that's usually what you do, is you take those first off. then it's almost always, at least in my tradition, the Theravada tradition, my experiences, it's silent. It's noble silence for 7 days or 5 days or however long it is. My experience and both times has been, there's been interactions I've had with people for the whole length of the retreat, and I never knew what their names were. I never spoke to them, but then I got to know them afterwards. This guy that the first time back in November, I ended up having a half a kuti to myself, so I didn't have a roommate. This time I had a roommate, so I had a roommate. I slept, in the same room as this person for 7 days without one word said. It's like most people, if you think about, like, people I talk to, that I'm the only Buddhist that pretty much anybody in my life knows. So they don't have experience of, you go to a place and there's no cell phones and there's nothing, and you don't talk for 7 days. What? That's crazy. So it's a weird experience that you observe, that how things go when you don't talk, and how easily you're able to see your mind and how your mind works when you can't talk. When you see, like, stuff that you want to say but you can't, and you see why you want to say that. But anyway, going back to, obviously, once the silence was broken, I was able to speak to my roommate, and we got to know each other, as we were cleaning up, on the last day. But so there's always a silence. And the schedule is you're up by 4:30. I usually wake up a little bit earlier, just because I like to shower in the morning, and you're sharing showers, and some places have shower schedules, some places don't. Depends on the place. So I always wake up a little bit earlier so I can get my shower in and be ready. And the place where I go to, the Bhavana Society, 5 o'clock in the morning on the retreats is optional yoga. So I always do the yoga first thing at 5 o'clock. And then at 5:30 is the first hour of meditation. Although in this retreat, every morning at 5:30, we took the 8 precepts and the refuges every time, every day. And then so it was 5:45 to 6:45 was the meditation. Now, 6:45 to 7 was the period where everybody got ready for breakfast. And at the breakfast, everybody sits down. Obviously, it's all in silence, and the monks come in. There's a whole ritual that they do, that the monks have to be basically given the food. So one monk will go with the person, the resident, who makes the food, and they'll go up to each thing. And I believe, I haven't heard it specifically, but I kind of hear what they say. And the resident will say, this food is provided for the sangha, and the monk will say, this is accepted by the sangha, that kind of thing. So when that ritual is done, then the monk comes in and bows, and that's the signal for the elder monks to get their food. And it's all laid out on a table, so it's like a buffet kind of thing. So the monks get their food, they come back, they do a chant, which is a recollection of the nature of food. And this is actually somebody, those of you who have heard me talk, that know me for a while, they know that I had weight loss surgery. At one point I was heavy, and I've always had a battle with food my whole life. So when I found this chant, this recollection on requisites of food, I actually say this every morning myself, because I find it helps. But what they say is, basically what they say every morning, or before every meal I should say, is they're chanting that I take this food with mindful reflection, not out of enjoyment or intoxication or gluttony, not for for making the body more attractive, but only for the continuation of the body and the living of the brahmacharya lifestyle. Brahmacharya is like the noble life, basically, living the Dhamma, being on the path, living the homeless life, the life of the monk. And then it goes on to say that basically they're chanting that just as this body is made up of mere components of form, so too is this food made up of components. And although pleasant as it is, when used up by the body, becomes extremely unpleasant. So basically what they're chanting is observing what food really is, and then how it comes out of the body in the end. So it's like, then they'll say, okay, and then it's time to eat. So once the monks are done with the chanting, they begin to eat, and then we can all go and get our food, and we eat. And they teach us to observe, every time we chew the food and all that stuff, and observe how solidity turns into liquidity, like how the food goes into your mouth solid and goes down your throat in a more liquid state, that kind of stuff. So anyway, after breakfast, which is from 7 to 8, you have a work period, and the work period is basically you're participating in the daily maintenance of the monastery. When you're not there, the monks and the residents basically do all of this work by themselves, and when you're there, there's more people, so there's more to do, so you help out. That can be helping cleaning up in the kitchen, cleaning bathrooms, cleaning places, vacuuming places, all kinds of different work. Since I am what I would call a self-styled mountain man, or somebody who enjoys being out in nature, I usually sign up for the work outside to help, because it's a forest monastery. There's always stuff to do, raking leaves, digging things, doing all kinds of stuff like that, and cutting wood. In November, I cut a lot of wood, which is not a normal job that visitors do, but I was able to convince one of the monks that I know what I was doing, and he saw I knew what I was doing, so he let me. So I cut wood for the 5 days, pretty much. So after that, so from 8 to 9 o'clock, so think about it, 9 o'clock, you've been up for 5 hours, you've already done breakfast, an hour of meditation, an hour of work, and now you go back for an hour and 45 minutes of meditation. And that brings you to 10:45, which then lunch is from 11 to 12. And lunch works pretty much the same as breakfast. Breakfast is what they do is, in addition to their normal chant of what they do about the reflection on requisites, they also chant the puja, which is the accepting of the food, because the lay people usually bring the food, or they donate so that the monks can have that meal. So they're chanting the puja, which is reflections and talking about this food and praising and talking about the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, all that kind of stuff. And then we all do the Karanaya Metta Sutta, the Metta chant together. Which is we're all beings, no matter how, where, no matter long, short, etc. May all beings be happy. That chant that you might be familiar with. So, and then after 12, that's it. There's no more eating. You eat like the monks. So once it's 12 o'clock, you're done. And after 12 o'clock, there is more meditating. Sometimes there's a question and answer session. More meditating. And then and usually at the end there's a Dhamma talk by the monks, and then you're in bed by 9 o'clock. So that's the typical day at a monastery. And I've been to a Mahayana monastery, and I've been to a Theravada monastery, and it's pretty much the same thing. So no matter what kind of monastery you go to, that's pretty much what you're going to experience every day when you do a retreat. Now, going back to what I was saying in terms of insights, the second time I had done, this retreat that I had just done, I had already been through the first retreat. I had already been through I knew what was going to happen. I knew that I was going to have a lot of pain, and it's all pain related to not being used to doing this. Now, obviously, if you have ever had like accidents, or if you have real issues with knees, legs, back, shoulders, and all that kind of stuff, if you have real pain because of that, then that's different than the pain I'm talking about. The pain I'm talking about is purely due to not being used to sitting on a cushion. And as you observe it, you start to see how much of that pain is actually created by you, and how much of it is real pain. And what I mean by that is, when we feel pain, because of our aversion to pain, we create negative mental states, and it makes it worse. The pain feels worse. When you're observing it objectively, you're not putting any aversion, or, for the sadomasochist's, attraction or craving on the pain. It's just the pain. It's like the Buddha talks about observing. You observe pain as pain. You observe a thought as a thought. You're just observing the pain. And I had, I guess, what I would consider an insight throughout one of the pain. And I started, for some reason, I just came up with this. I hesitate to call it a mantra, but I came up with this phrase in my head. And then, ironically, 2 days later, it pretty much matched up what they talked about when the monks started teaching us Vipassana. I was in a lot of pain, and it just came into my head. This body has pleasure. This body has pain. This mind seeks pleasure. This mind hates pain. This pain is not mine. This pleasure is not mine. This body is not mine. Self is an illusion. That was the phrase that came into my mind. And I was thinking about it, observing it, and I kept saying it, and all of a sudden it was weird. The pain started going away. And there was no pain at all. And I started, actually, between that meditation session and a couple the next day, I was doing this a lot, and it got to the point where I was actually like testing it. I was actually like making myself feel more pain, just being like a sadomasochist, being stupid, overdoing it. And then I hurt my leg to the point where I was like, okay, that was silly of me. I'm just gonna stop doing that. But when the monk Bhante Silananda started teaching us about Vipassana, one of the things, the meditation things that he wanted us to practice, was applying 6 factors. And the 6 factors are, whatever you're applying the 6 factors to is not me, not mine, not myself. It is impermanent, it is unsatisfactory, it is soulless. So when something pops up in your meditation, sound is not me, sound is not mine, sound is not myself, sound is impermanent, sound is dukkha, or unsatisfactory, sound is anicca, sound is anatta, non-self, or soulless. So you're observing all of these things that are happening, and you're applying these 6 factors to that. And what he wanted us to do that first day was, that we started doing Vipassana, was applying the senses to that. So it would be, I is not mine, I is not me, I is not myself, I is impermanent, I is unsatisfactory, I is soulless. And then sight is not me, sight is not mine, sight is not myself, sight is impermanent, sight is unsatisfactory, sight is soulless. So you go through all the 6 senses and all the the way you contact phenomena through the six senses, and you practice that, and that's what you're doing, and even body. So I went from doing my phrase to body is not me, body is not mine, body is not myself, body is impermanent, or ever changing, never lasting forever. Body is dukkha, unsatisfactory, stress, suffering. Body is soulless, or anatta, not self. Part of Buddhist teaching, Dhamma teaching, is that there is no permanent soul, there is no permanent self. Anything that is self is impermanent. So that's where part of the training was happening. So each day there was a different thing that the Bhante wanted us to practice to build up our training. And so observing and saying, going through the six factors, applying the six factors to pain, applying it to sound, applying it to aversion, was something that made a huge difference in my meditation. Because it's when you realize that pain is just pain, then it's not yours. You don't own it. It's just pain. The body is not yours. You don't own it. It's just the body. A body has pain, just like my original phrase that I came up with. When you do that, when you apply these six factors, then it makes things a lot easier to deal with, because you're not attaching to it. It's not me, it's not my body, so it's not my pain. So I don't have to have an aversion to it. I don't have to have an attraction to it. It's just there. It just exists. It just does what it does. So when you have pain, it's just there. All you can do is observe it. You don't want to, that is the physical arrow. Those of you who have talked to me, heard me talk about what the Buddha talks about, the physical arrow and the mental arrow. The physical arrow is something you cannot escape. The mental arrow, however, is. The mental arrow makes the physical pain worse. So, that's pretty much the great thing about those meditation sessions, or the meditation retreats, is that, and I think they do it on purpose, to be honest with you, because I don't think anybody but maybe monks can do 6-7 hours of meditation a day and like not have any problems with it. I think that they do it on purpose to have you work through all of these things that is going to happen. They know, that you're going to have pains. You know that because of that, you're going to have aversions. And you want to work past that. You want to find insights that work through that. So it's not something that you should go to thinking that it's going to be a nice, peaceful vacation away from work and family for 7 days. It's actual work. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. So what you're doing is you're going to improve your practice. You're going to increase your insight. And it does that. As long as you let it happen. As long as you keep the positive mind states of just observing and just being there, it will happen. And this is why I write a journal every day when I'm at there, because there's so many insights, so many things that happen that and when you're in practice, insights don't just like come, like you don't sit down and like, okay, I'm gonna have insights today. Insights come whenever they want to, pretty much. Mr. Green, you have your voice on. So insights come at their own time. Like there's the story of Ananda, who is the one of the premier, the attendants of the Buddha, one of his disciples, and he was one of the last of his major disciples to actually become enlightened. And the story was Ananda tried to be enlightened and tried really hard and did a lot of practicing and overdid himself, and he decided to take a rest. And as he was lying down to rest, before his head hit the pillow, that's when he obtained enlightenment. Not when he was even trying. So it works the same thing with insights. You know, they come when they come. You can't, like, I was doing walking meditation. And by the way, you can do, you know, there's nobody at these retreats that is there with a stick to force you to do things. You know what I mean? There's nobody that's going to be like, oh, you have to sit there for an hour. You know, if you get up, we're going to whack you with a stick. There's nothing like that. If you have to get up to go somewhere to do something, you know, nobody's going to say anything about that. You know, there's nobody, you know, if you talk to somebody in the corner somewhere, you know, nobody's going to yell at you for oh my God, you're supposed to be silent. There's none of that in the retreats. It's all of these things that you do on the retreat, the taking of the 8 precepts, the not talking, you know, I actually turn my cell phone off and leave it in the car. Some people kind of don't. I've seen people texting in the middle of a retreat, and you know, there's no judgment there. There's no you're there for yourself. You're there for your own practice. Excuse me. And you take these rules on for your own practice, for your own advancement. You know, there's nobody there that's going to hit you with a stick and prod you and be mad if you're doing this or that. So you can do walking meditation, like, you know, what a lot of people do is they'll sit until their back hurts, then they'll do walking meditation. I do walking meditation first usually, and I do it a lot because walking meditation seems to work for me better than sitting meditation. But that's my own issues with aversion and attraction and craving that I need to work through personally. But there's an old saying that's a pretty common one, and the story goes that people were meditating at a monastery in a city, and somebody was complaining about all the cars going by ruining their meditation. And the wise monk said, "Are the cars ruining you, or are you ruining the cars? Is the sound of the cars bothering you, or are you bothering the cars, the sound of the cars?" And it sounds like, I was like, oh, that's a cool, neat phrase. And it was during one of my walking insight, when I was doing a walking meditation, I noticed this, I guess there was sound coming from outside of the meditation hall, and I watched one of the meditators get up and close the doors. And I stopped at the end of my walking path, and it just came to me. I understand it now, or at least I think I understand it. And I understand why it is actually you bothering the sound, not the sound bothering you. You're bothering the sound because you're creating a volitional mental action of aversion towards that sound. You're actually creating karma against that sound. The sound is neutral. The sound has nothing. The sound didn't mean to bother you in any way. But you're creating a negative mind state in yourself against that sound. And I thought to myself, yeah, you are bothering the sound. You really are. It made perfect sense to me in that insight. And you get these, they come whenever they want to come. They come. Sometimes they come because of a specific situation that happened, like the woman getting up and closing the doors. Other times your mind is just clear, and then it's realization, it's insight. Boom, it's there. So the reason why you go on these meditation retreats is to improve your practice, to to learn, and to see things as they truly are, which is practice in general. So you should never go into the meditation retreats thinking that it's gonna be all happiness and peaceful. But you should also not take what I've said and say, oh, it's gonna be hell. I joke around and say it's hell, but it's hell for a good reason. It's hell that I would gladly do again and again and again and again, just because of the amazing insights and the advancement in your practice that you gain by doing these retreats. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. If there's any questions or comments or anything like that, we can have a discussion now. I highly suggest that you do one. And obviously, they have different levels. So you're not going to go right into a 7-day retreat. It just doesn't happen. The 7-day retreat is what's called an intermediate retreat. And there's 10-day retreats, and there's some in the Mahayana traditions. You'll see like 30-day retreats and stuff like that. I haven't really seen that in the Theravada traditions, really, at least not much. But there's different levels. So if you're going on your first retreat, it's usually like a long weekend, like 3 days, something like that. It's not, the retreat I went to, you would have already had to have gone to multiple retreats beforehand before they would even let you go on the retreat. So that it's something that you build up over time. Like I did a 5-day. Well, my first retreat technically wasn't a meditation retreat. It was a Dhamma retreat, but there's a lot of meditation in that too. So that was 3 days. Then the meditation retreat that I did in November was 5 days. This March it was 7 days. So logically, to step that up, my next retreat would be a 10-day retreat. The place I go to doesn't offer any of those this year, so I'm going back as just a visitor. Actually, you can go once you've been to a couple of retreats and they know you. You can basically call up and say, I want to come on this day for 4 days, or on this period for 4 days, and you go and you live in the kuti in the monastery, and you're part of what they do. You go to the meditations and stuff like that, but it's not a retreat. It's like a self-imposed retreat. You're there on your own, and you stay. You can meditate on your own and do all these things. So that's my next. I'm going back in May for 4 days on Waisak, actually. Because this May on Waisak it'll be 5 years that I took the Precepts and the Refuge for the first time. So it's one of those things where I want to go back. I want to go back to this place every couple months, so I don't get too how should I say, too used to regular life. Because when you get away from doing these things for too long, it just you start to go back into older mindsets and stuff like that. And I find that if I'm going to, it's like a refresher, because habits change over time. You come back, from a retreat, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and you do all these great things, and you start to develop good habits. But then a month or two down the road, it just changes. You don't do it anymore, or you do it a lot less, or this or that. So, if you go back every couple months, it's like, oh yeah, now I remember what it's always a refresher. So, any comments, questions? I mean, if there's no more comments, questions, nothing to Um, that's gonna be a tough one, Fizz. But it's something that they have actual chairs, like that you can sit on, and people have cushions and stuff like that. You don't have to sit on like an actual cushion on the ground. They have chairs. Um, it's also something that for you personally, if you needed to get up every half hour to walk, you do walking meditation. Simple as that. A lot of people don't teach walking meditation, and this is something that I'm really big on. And the reason I'm big on it is because nobody teaches it. It's like, why did it take me being a Buddhist, quote unquote, for a decade before I even was really taught walking meditation? Whereas it is such a powerful type of meditation that you should really not think of it as, okay, because of my back, I have to get up and do walking meditation. It's not as good as sitting meditation, but I'll just do it because my back hurts. Now, it's just as good as sitting meditation. The Buddha talks about the 4 types: sitting, walking, standing, lying down. Meditating in these 4 types, because really it's not the position of the body is really means nothing in meditation, because what you're trying to do is you're developing mindfulness at all times. So whether you're sitting, standing, walking, lying down, it doesn't matter. Oh, well, lying down is as good as any other. Although obviously you kind of don't want to do it when you're prone to fall asleep. It's like not like, oh, it's 10 o'clock at night, I think I'm going to do some lying down meditation. No, that's not going to work. Although if you do meditation before you sleep, or if you're like meditating to sleep, then that's good. That's actually a good thing. But let me go back and answer some of the. I'll answer this one real quick because it's easy. Do retreats cost money, and if they do, how much? If it's at a true monastery, it will never cost you money. It will never, ever, ever, ever cost you money. Now, there's meditation centers, and there's stuff like Goenka retreats and stuff like that. That costs. But a true monastery will never, ever charge anything. And the reason being is because they can't. It's against the Vinaya. And it's against everything that the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught that his teaching is not an esoteric teaching where there is hidden knowledge, secret knowledge for people who are initiated. It's an exoteric teaching where it's for all people. All levels of it are for all people. There's no higher level of Buddhism that's just for the monks, or just for this, or just for that. So it will always be free. That's why the far majority of Buddhist books are free. The far majority of Buddhist books you will find on PDF format on the internet, or for free at various places. There's different examples that are not that way. Like there's some Buddhist books that I've bought on Amazon, but for the far majority of them you will find for free on that. Well, for retreats, most of these places have websites, and you apply on the website. To just go visit a monastery, you would most likely want to call and ask what time is the best to come. Most monasteries will have like Friday night meditation and Dhamma talk. There's also events that are done on Sundays or Saturdays. But most you want to see what the schedule is, read what the schedule is, and you want to, if you need to call, if they don't have a clear website, if you need to call, then you can call and find out when's the best time to come. It's not that they will tell you to go away if you come and it's not, nobody else is there. It's just that it's easier if you want to talk to somebody, if you want to get the best out of it, it's easier to know when to go. So, and dana is simply the act of generosity. when I go on these retreats, they don't ask for anything. Obviously, because I love this place, because I want it to keep existing so I can keep going on meditation retreats and keep learning. I want, because of that, I want to do what I can to support it. So I bring money each time I go, and I donate. And now I find that you can actually donate online too. Most places you can donate online. So I try to donate every once in a while, and it's not like you donate what you can afford, and every little bit helps. Some people can afford to donate hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Some people donate $5 or $10 every couple months, and it doesn't really matter. So I mean, there's always a donation box, but you'll never get like, okay, when are you gonna donate? You'll never get that. They don't even. I mean, it's just something that people know, that the donation box is there. If people want to put stuff in, they do. At the Bhavana Society, at the end of the retreats, they do give like a little, what they call a Dana talk. Usually a layperson does it because the monks can't. And the one of the residents will talk about, like, because like people write checks, you have to write a check to specifically, so they'll give all that information for people who want to donate, but it's never, and they'll say, everything here is solely out of your generosity. So I mean, they'll explain it, but it's never like, okay, we need you to donate. It's never, it's never like that. I mean, like I said, I've heard of meditation centers and different things like that will charge for things. I've never been to a meditation center. For me, I always wanted to go direct to the source. So I went to the monks. Whether it's Mahayana, Theravada, I always went to the monasteries first. That was my first thing. Let's see, what exactly does it mean to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha? I will talk about that, although I honestly think that a monk would give a much better answer to this. I can only give a cursory answer to it. What you're saying is, when you're taking refuge, you say, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dhamma, I take refuge in the Sangha. It's something that, to me, in my mind, is, for too many people, it's just people say it and do it because it's kind of just like that's what people do. Like, it's the same thing with bowing. When you go to like retreats and stuff, you see like, oh, people bow, do their prostrations, and like, why do you do it? Like, people just do it because if they feel like they're culturally pressured, they have to do it. Everybody's doing it, so they do it. Nobody will yell at you for not bowing. You don't have to bow at a monk each time. Monks don't care if you bow. They don't even care if you ignore them. It doesn't matter. They're not, if they did, they wouldn't be monks. So there's no, obviously, it's something that's done. Like, I bow, like just a little hands closed when the monks pass, just a real brief thing, and it's something because I feel like a deep respect for them, that it's not something that I feel like I need to do. It's not something I feel like, as Westerners, we're not used to the bowing and all this kind of stuff, so it feels weird to us. It feels like it feels like the antithesis of how we were raised to bow. Like, why are we bowing? Why are we doing this? What's the point in this? Are we worshiping them? Or are we doing this? Or are we doing that? No, it's just a simple sign of respect. That's all it is. Especially if you're not used to speaking with monastics at first, and I went through we all go through the same thing. It's very like, oh, like, you don't know what you're supposed to do, and it's like you're kind of nervous, and so you don't really do anything, and like, if they talk to you, it's like, oh, it's like you're like, oh, what am I supposed to say? Now the monks kind of know me there at the Bhavana Society, so when I go there, it's just, they know me. Say, hey, hi, Joe, and I talk to them, and it's very, they're very loose and easy people. I mean, the person who's the most the most visible that we often see is the Dalai Lama. And he's always a happy, jovial person, easy to talk to. And that all monks are that way. Even, they're not always all supposed to be running around laughing and stuff, but, they're not always doing that. Sometimes they look really serious, but they're all, they're very approachable people. No, I've never spoken to the Dalai Lama, but in terms of seeing videos and watching him, observing him, with people and stuff like that, interviews. Most monks are the same. The monks are always saying things that make you laugh, and they laugh with you. It's just the way it is. So going back to taking refuge, what you're doing in taking refuge is you're putting faith and respect in the Buddha, his message, and those who follow the message, the Sangha. And when I say faith, if you're a Westerner, it's like, oh boy, faith. What's going on now? You're just believing things. And this is, when I say about faith, this is why I say it's something that should only be done, not just because it's a cultural thing that you feel like you have to do it, but because you want to do it. And faith in Buddhism, there's two different types of faith. And I'm trying to remember the exact words that the monk Bhante Silananda, he actually talked about this at the retreat. There's basically blind faith, which is you're just believing in whatever somebody tells you, or just believing in whatever, something that you can't see or something like that. And there's faith out of experience. And in Buddhism, when you have faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, you have faith that their message is true, because you've experienced that in your own insight, in your own experience. Like they talk about how one of the things that is eradicated in those as you start to go down the path, as you become a stream enterer and stuff like, doubt is eradicated. Now I can't say I'm nowhere close to being a stream enterer. I can't say I don't have doubts. However, I have faith that the message is true, because in following the message, I've started to see the true reality of it. So for me, I do have faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. It makes sense to me. It's not something that I'm just starting out and I believe in it because people say I should believe in it. It's not even worth your time. Yeah, stream enter or stream winner, as they talk about it. The first stage, becoming a stream enter, or when you only have to return 7 more times before you're enlightened. That's the levels that they talk about. One of the things, there's 3 things that are eradicated once you become a stream enter, and one of those is doubt. So that's why I say I'm not a stream enterer yet, and I have doubt just like all of us. So, but I am starting to have faith, and it's faith based on first-hand experience, based on first-hand insight. So, like I say, I do my bowing, I do my prostrations, but I don't do it every single time I enter a place, every single time I leave a place, because to me it becomes meaningless. If I get to the point where doing it every single time becomes meaningful, then I do it every single time. But the first time I ever really did it, my first retreat, after I had been in such a negative mind state for 3.5 days, and I was dreading meditation so much, and I was just sitting on this bench, and it was time to meditate, and I just did not want to go in there. And I literally had, I guess what I would call an epiphany, an insight. And this phrase came to my head: all fears are destroyed in front of the Dhamma. And it just changed. This insight eradicated all my fear at that point, and I just went in and I had a nice, peaceful meditation. And I did my bow. I was like, holy freaking crap, this stuff works. So when I bowed in gratitude, it was a real bow in gratitude. It wasn't, okay, I entered the place, so I do my bow, and then I sit on my cushion. So to me, don't just do it because it's something that is culturally, that's what everybody does. You don't want to fall into that because that's the other thing just came to my head that's eradicated as a stream enterer is rites and rituals. Dependence on rites and rituals. So when bowing is a rite and a ritual, there's not much meaning to it, is it? When bowing is something that has meaning and enhances your practice because you have faith, real faith based on experience, because you have faith and because you want to take refuge in the Dhamma and the Buddha, his message, and those who follow the message, who perpetuate the message. All that can do is enhance your practice. It doesn't detract from it. It's not a ritual that's meaningless, that really has nothing to do with anything. So it's something that, again, and it comes naturally. It's not something that, everything in this practice comes naturally on its own term. You can't force it. All you can do is keep practicing. Keep practicing and objectively observing. And when you practice, it'll come. It's like if those of you ever watched that old movie, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. If you build your practice, the insight will come. It's as simple as that. And I say this not at being, some high attainer of meditation or anything like that, not being a monk, not being a guru. I say this as somebody who is just a regular guy who is in this practice. And that's something that's very powerful, because if you think about it, and when I think about it, I'm just I'm just at the beginning, and I've had these experiences. I can't imagine the insight and the experience of somebody who is a stream winner, who is a stream enterer. It's just totally, it doesn't even make sense to me to even think about it, or even to be enlightened. I can't even imagine how that would be. But I have faith that I will eventually get to that point, as long as I'm practicing and observing and practicing and seeing things as they truly are. Because I have faith, because I've seen it. I've seen it happen with my own experience. And I know that that is the path. So I don't have to worry about, am I going to get to this level of attainment? Am I going to get to this jhana or that jhana? Or am I going to be able to do this or that? All of that is meaningless. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. My only responsibility as somebody who is on the path of Dhamma, who is working, who is practicing, my only responsibility is to continue practicing. That's it. And when you just continue practicing, you don't get caught up in all of the extra stuff that will just come on its own. You don't have to worry about it. Then it'll start to come. Because in the past, I was like that. I was always worried about, always overanalyzing meditation and getting angry over my meditation because I couldn't do this. The rule books say this, the teachers say I'm supposed to do this or that, and I can't get to it. It's only when I started letting go and not worrying about these things, that's when I started getting insight. That's when I started seeing that this stuff really works, that this path really works. And like I said, I'm only at the beginning of it. I'm no, I'm not advanced in any means. But if you haven't seen it, like if you would have told, if I would have talked to myself of 3 years ago, I was yeah, that's nice, yeah, whatever, believe what you want to believe, because I didn't have those insights back then. So to me, the word faith would have been from somebody who grew up as a Catholic, which I did, that kind of faith, and like, faith, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And to be honest with you, the reason I say I think a monk is a better, somebody who would better answer that, is because I can't claim that I have full, utter faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha either. I don't say it all the time. I don't go for refuge all the time. But just like with that bowing, when it's done for a reason for me, it has a large effect. It has a large significance. So I guess that's pretty much it. So unless there's any comments or questions, we can keep talking, or we can end it. Very true. Very true. And you know who I blame, or who I credit my being able to change in this way. The hinge that led me down the path that I'm on now is Ajahn Brahm. Him watching his videos, and him teaching about letting go, and it's funny, I've since then pretty much verified what he said in listening to many other monks, Theravada monks in my case, who say the same thing. It's all, you're not going to get anywhere by chasing the cat. They all teach the same thing. And I've come to realize that and it's all the same path. People, they teach it in different ways, but it's all the same. It's all letting go. So, okay, well, Mr. Green Buddhist, it was nice to meet you. I don't think I've met you before. Everybody else, I definitely have. So, are you brand new to the Buddha Center, or you just haven't caught anything that I do lately? Okay. Do you have the website that has the schedule of all? We have 4 monastics on here. Actually, wait, 5. I'm sorry. The Venerable Fra, Venerable Yuttadhammo, Venerable Wayne, Venerable David, and Lama Lodro. So we have 5 monastics that do teachings here, and a bunch of teachers, and we have a lot of different events. It's a great place to be. If you don't have the link, I can provide that for you. Okay, very good. Well, welcome to the Buddha Center. I hope there's much here for you to enhance your practice, and it's good to see everybody else again, Dhamma friends, my Dhamma brothers and sisters. Until next time, much metta to you all, and Sukhi Hantu, may you be happy.